three works come from an amazing, if underappreciated, subgenre of South African painting. More specifically, they are part of an incredible 20th century tradition of South African painters working on the east coast of Africa. This 20th century tradition is perhaps started by Frans Oerder, who makes a very important painting expedition up the east coast in 1903, shortly after he was released as a prisoner of war after the Anglo-Boer War. And the small group of works he produces on this expedition are remarkable for their subtropical, hugely atmospheric qualities. We're wonderfully lucky to have this work in our sale, repatriated. It's been in Holland for a number of years, and it shows the entrance gate of the 5-point fort of St. John the Baptist on Ibu Island. It's labeled Oos-Afrika on the back. We know now it is on Ibu Island in present-day Mozambique. The fort, of course, still stands in its dilapidated state. The inscriptions which mark the fort being started in 1791 by the Portuguese are still there, although I think the coat of arms has been stripped and is installed in a local museum. It shows this wonderfully shadowy figure at the entrance. You can still get a view into the inside of the fort, very much deserted then as it is now. That is 1903. This incredible work is by Pierneef, and it is of Dar es Salaam. This is a work from one of the artist's most important periods. He went, of course, to Europe in the middle of 1925, where he was exposed to all these new guises of modernism, and he and his wife May are the only two passengers on the SS Torber returning from Europe in the early months of 1926. And he comes down the east coast of Africa then, and he has the opportunity to stop in to as many ports as he can, and he draws and paints furiously during those day or 2-day or 3-day excursions on the coast. This work would have been produced in that period. I expect, though, it would have been finished up in his studio, bearing in mind its enormous, imposing size. On his return voyage from Europe, he is determined to, as he says, strike a blow on the Pretoria frontier. He is determined to paint in a more avant-garde way, to use his experiences in Europe in his paintings. And you can start to see that modernist spirit in a work like this. He's far more urgent in his application of paint. His strokes are far more quickly applied compared to some of the works he had done prior to his trip to Europe. So this dates from 1926, a remarkable painting by Pierneef. It does include a number of small figures that Pierneef used very rarely in his compositions, but you can get a sense of this subtropical atmosphere, these enormous palms sort of gently moving in the breeze. Also reminiscent, I think, of an amazing painting we were lucky enough to sell last year by Frans Oerder, again of an East Coast scene. Going forward a number of years, I have to show this picture, which is undoubtedly one of the standout lots in our November sale. It is a late work by Pierneef. It dates from 1954, a spectacular work in these well-known pastel colors that he was so fond of. It is again an East Coast picture, although this is of a cinnamon mill in the Seychelles. Pierneef had a very, very busy period in 1953 and 1954. He had a large retrospective at the University of Potchefstroom. He also finished a very large-scale commission showing a view of Pretoria, and I suppose after that very intricate work, he went on some sort of a break. And he goes to the Seychelles in 1954. He writes in letters to his friend, Mr. Leon Cachet, that he wasn't particularly impressed by this verdant tropical landscape. He found the buildings far more interesting. Of course, He was a wonderful architectural draftsman, and you get that sense in this wonderful depiction of a cinnamon mill with these sort of iron sheets over the roof, these beautiful rusty reds, which of course strike such a wonderful contrast with these other sort of cream soda greens, this mountain in the background. We always talk about how much we love the way the smoke very much is integrated over this peak and into the clouds. A spectacular painting, again, a very large scale work by Pierneef. We're not used to seeing works of this scale. And of course that does give some sense as to the importance of the work in Pierneef's own mind. This work went on show at the Standard Bank Gallery in 2015 in a landmark retrospective curated by my colleague Wilhelm van Rensburg, the first retrospective of the artist's work for 3.5 decades. Spectacular example of Pierneef's late career style.